wicked problems are human problems. They're caused by the webs of interdependence that make up the complex adaptive system that we call human society. With a linear system, elements have strong cause and effect relationships. We don't always have to understand them to be able to predict what the outcome will be. I don't understand how my washing machine works, but I know that when I hit start, about half an hour later, I'm going to have clean clothes. Linear systems are easy to predict. With a non-linear system, information gained by interactions between interdependent elements is then fed back into the system. This is what's known as a feedback loop. A system with a multitude of elements can create an almost infinite number of feedback loops. When this happens, we say that the system has started to behave chaotically. We call this a complex adaptive system. So then, a complex adaptive system is more like trying to figure out where a certain sock will be at any point in time throughout the wash. All wicked problems are related, and often the system that facilitates this relationship is corruption. I'm going to juxtapose the wicked problem of corruption with the tame problem of electoral fraud to illustrate the distinction between these two concepts. Wicked problems are difficult to define. Electoral fraud is easy to define. It's just when people cast votes that they're not entitled to. Corruption is impossible to define, or at least very hard. Whether you believe corruption is merely bribery, or if it also includes things like gerrymandering, pork barreling, voter suppression, or even political lobbying, is going to depend on your opinion, and that depends on where you stand within the system. We are not outside of it, we're within the system. Every wicked problem and its solution is a one-time operation. It's human nature to try and break large things down into smaller things to make them more manageable. Unfortunately, this doesn't work with something like a wicked problem. It doesn't work with a complex adaptive system. That's because they're more than the sum of their parts. Within a complex adaptive system, small changes can create large changes in a completely different area of the system. For instance, if you wanted to tackle corruption and break it down, you might think that it's a good idea to tackle electoral fraud. And to do this, you might want to tighten voter identification laws. However, this is going to have the consequence that a large number of marginalised people become disenfranchised. Which brings us to, solutions to wicked problems are not right or wrong. They're subjective. So whether you believe that tightening voter identification laws is a small step towards fighting corruption, or whether you believe that it is indeed voter suppression and an act of corruption, is going to depend on where you stand within the system. This is what makes wicked problems so wicked. They affect everybody differently, but in order to hope to combat them, we have to work and think collectively. Wicked problems have no stopping rule. Electoral fraud has a stopping rule. It's quantifiable. We know when it's gotten better, we know when it's gotten worse. Corruption, on the other hand, has too many elements for it to be quantifiable. This is part of what makes it a wicked problem. There are no given alternative solutions to wicked problems. An alternative solution to combating electoral fraud would be harsher penalties for perpetrators. Unfortunately, there are no such given alternatives when combating corruption. Within a complex adaptive system in nature, fractal patterns start to emerge when it's looked at from a macro perspective. These self-organizing patterns are called emergents. Ant colonies are another form of complex adaptive systems, just like human society. Ants instinctively understand these patterns, that they possess something called swarm intelligence. Humans don't possess this. It's important to remember, even though we can't see the patterns, they're always there. We're just too close to comprehend them. So it's only by practicing viewing the system as a whole and collaborating with people whose perspectives are different than our own that we can hope to tackle the wicked problems that are facing our society today.